I'd like to call this St. Andrews Task Force meeting to order. First thing on the agenda this evening, reports and discussion. First up, Lincoln County Health and Maine Health public meeting.
Figured I'd put it right on the beginning of the conversation because I knew that would resonate in the meeting, get thoughts and discussions out of the way.
Can't hear you.
What's that?
We can't hear you.
I didn't say anything.
One of your better comments.
You as all of you.
Does anybody have any comments?
What are we commenting on?
Talking about the meeting that occurred
Oh,
down at the Opera House a little over a week ago.
Well, I wasn't at that meeting, obviously, but I know their latest white paper has some real errors in it. And a couple I want to point out is that the graphics of the EMR, there's a real failure in Portland. They do not have an electronic medical records system in place right now. And they might not have it until 2015, that's the current outlook. So the EMR and the financial software problems are examples of the major failure of Maine Health to create a real benefit for the state. Millions of dollars have been charged to member hospitals on staff time, salaries and mileage over the past 2 or 3 years with no benefit. This system failure also adds to the operational cost going forward that were not planned for the regional consolidation of finance that is now delayed. The cost of the Maine Health Center is huge in improper service and supply charges. IT leadership has been fired at Maine Health by Maine Health Administration, and Maine Health Administration is truly accountable. They should have been on top of this, and they have no operational duties like hospital CEOs. Urgent care centers are not established across the street from primary care offices. Any consultant will tell you that the Booth Bay location is not financially sound for an urgent care center. Urgent care is used by people without a primary care physician, insurance plan, or by visitors. Emergency services are totally different and are in place for saving lives. Urgent care is just for care that could be done in a physician's office like Lincoln Medical Partners or St. Andrews Hospital, who has x-rays and labs. This was chosen to keep the people happy. The urgent care concept is not a sound financial decision. Basic knowledge of urgent care centers will tell you that the region does not have the population to support the cost, but the critical access hospital reimbursement does work with the federal support. So those are my observations of the real errors in that white paper.
Those are pretty substantial errors. I mean, I'll throw it out what I can for that. It was a well-scripted, well-rehearsed kabuki dance. I mean, it was beautiful how they put it on. They had their strongest guy up there doing most of the talking. What he talked about at first was all wonderful. Nobody has any disagreements that we all need to get more in touch with our personal physicians and focus our healthcare that way. There was very little discussion about the impact of the closing of the ER. They danced around that nicely. And when Tom tried to bring up a question, I mean, Mr. Karen, you could tell there was a spring in his chair just waiting for you to speak because you were going to be put in your place. And, you know, he did his best to try to put you in your place. Did not open up, I thought, reasonable dialogue at that point at all. And when questions started getting towards the end, I mean, you know, all of a sudden it was time to close down questions. Now, yes, it was coming up on 8 o'clock, but I'm not altogether sure that the people that run the Opera House were going to lose their minds if we'd stayed for a little while longer.
Kathy said from the back that the place was open, stay as
Right,
long as you want.
I don't think that anybody booked at 9 o'clock, so I don't think that was a major issue. I want to thank everybody that attended. It was, you know, the attendance was excellent, as we were not surprised that it would be. I don't know that we learned a lot new that night. They got a chance to put their best, what they perceived as their best foot forward. And we didn't learn a lot that we didn't already know. That's my take on the evening. I don't know what else I can tell you.
And I will say, if I might, that I think Dr. Foray really believes that he can give better care with more people around.
The one thing I can tell you, Dr. Oliphant, without question, is this process has gone on. Foray is a true believer. I mean, he is telling you what he believes. You know.
He's not, I will say, he's not standing up there parroting the party line.
No, he is.
I think he is probably one of the major movers behind the decision to close the ER because he feels it is not good care.
Yep.
He believes in the ACO model, which,
And the problem is that even the incident he cited with the pregnant woman who was so terribly ill, now I don't really believe that they had in-house pediatrics there. I'm sure they had to call the pediatrician. They may have had an obstetrician on the premises, just if he was there for another reason. And the hospitalist was certainly there. But having called in ancillary services, such as x-ray and lab, well, Bras will notify the ER they're bringing someone in. If the ER doc thinks they're going to need lab and x-ray, they will call them, and I have seen them beat the patient in. I've had them there within 5 minutes of a patient of mine on the floor needed labs or x-ray. They respond quickly, the hands are there, and frankly, if an iPad is sufficient to make the paramedics happy, why is an iPad not sufficient to make Dr. Foray happy? He can consult with other people the same way the paramedics can. In neither case is it going to jump off its bracket and perform CPR. So, okay, it's not hands. He wants hands. He can have hands. I have personally announced my willingness, look, if you ever need me, call me. I can be there in 10 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that was with PAs. That was back when it was I've gone in there and I discovered that from my house, I can get to St. Andrews in the time it takes the Pointer Sisters to sing Jump. If you want to look up how long that is, check the record label.
Yes.
As a nurse, I took umbrage when he seemed to downgrade physician's assistants and nurse practitioners. That's not true at all, the way he was downgrading them. I thought that was terrible.
I would
And
add,
I started to say something, and who was it with the
Microphone.
microphone went red, and said, no. It was Stacy. Yeah.
By the way, it took me a couple of days to realize the microphone difference between the two public meetings. In our public meeting, the microphone was handed to the person who then could use it,
Yes.
whereas at this meeting,
They
the
were
microphone was
superglued to their
in the
hands.
hands of an employee of LCH
She wouldn't let go
with
of
a
it.
finger on the on-off button. And that person would back away at an appropriate time, and you could not. I tried to take the thing, and she wouldn't give it to me.
You might know her.
She knows.
Mike?
In looking back, that entire presentation is simply a description of a real good hospital without an ER and hospital beds, right? They describe the hospital that should be there anyhow. We should have everything they've described anyhow. What they ignored was their own number, 6% of the hospital, I don't think that's accurate, that will not be there in the future. That percentage being ER and the hospital beds themselves. The only entertaining moment was Mr. Karen, as you've mentioned, when he did his Phineas T. Bluster Act, proving that it takes a CPA and an executive from a Fortune 500 company It takes a CPA with a lot of experience to make $5 million appear and disappear, and reappear and disappear. It takes a really good mathematician and CPA to do that. And he did not own up to that money coming and going. He didn't attempt to explain it. All he said was, I'm a CPA, I know more than you, sit down. And that's that. There was no give and take whatsoever. The finances that we know about just plain aren't reliable. Last, I want to note, I was out on Vinyl Haven a couple weekends ago, and I went by their medical center. The Vinyl Haven Medical Center, population 1,200 on the whole island. And on the sign, there's a doctor's name and a bunch of PAs, and they're all very happy with what they have there. I didn't get a chance to stop in, didn't discover it until late. But on Vinyl Haven, they have a medical center, staff of PAs, and they're not dropping like flies.
And how many times have we heard chief financial officers cooking the books
Right.
and being
The
called on it?
The stove's trouble.
I'd like to say something about the exchange I had with Mr. Karen. In the first place, the question that I asked, if I had been aware that the moderator couldn't answer a question, I would have addressed it to Peter Mundy instead, because he was the chairman of the Board of Trustees. So the question I asked was, and I'm going to repeat it here. The question I asked was, have you ever visualized yourself as the defendant in a lawsuit where the annual report of St. Andrews is being brandished as being misleading? And that was basically the question. And I want to say it is misleading. Bill Caron, when he jumped up to intercede, to insist that I had attacked Mary Jo, which I had not, he insisted that I was, quote, wrong in arguing that the bottom line is not the bottom line. The fact is that there are 3 lines that can be used to report profits in a not-for-profit. They've used 2 of the 3 lines. I insist that the line that should be used is the line that's generally used, i.e. the bottom line. It's called the bottom line because it is the bottom line. And everybody knows, even people in a jury will know that the bottom line is the bottom line. And it is typically reported by not-for-profits. The real weird exception is St. Andrews. Now, the interesting thing is that, as I mentioned, there are 3 lines that can be used. They have used 2 of the 3 lines. They used the operating profit loss in their annual report, the one that Phil Smith was brandishing, which brought to mind that image to me. It's also what they used as the basis that they fed to the Booth Bay Register last August. So it was used as the basis for, after all, the profit. The hospital has been losing money because it's been shown an operating loss for 9 out of the last 10 years. So
That's
therefore,
incorrect,
we
just so you
should
know.
close
It's
it down.
not the document we used at the Booth Bay Register. Just so you
Pardon me?
know, we did not use the annual report at the Booth Bay Register. Just to clarify, we used the audited financial statements.
You
So
did not.
I just want to be clear.
You said that.
I'm not going to engage in an argument with you. I just wanted you not to mistake Ginley reports.
I'm not talking, I'm talking about the audited financials.
Okay.
And there are 3 lines in the audited financials. And they have used 2 of the 3 lines. One line is the operating profit and loss. And that was the line that was cited in the Booth Bay Register last summer. It's also the line that was used in the report that Phil Smith was waiving. And by the way, that line shows a very substantial average annual loss at St. Andrews. The same line would show a loss at the Opera House, the YMCA, the Botanical Gardens,
etc.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the reason that line is not used for a not-for-profit. It's because it's always a loss made up for by gifts. And what it underreports is gift income. Now, if you move toward the bottom of the line, you get to an intermediate line, which is the one that in the most recent Booth Bay Register report and in the white paper is used to report the financial status of St. Andrews. That line also shows a loss, a smaller loss, by the way, because it takes into account some gift income. But if you go all the way down to the bottom line, the one with the two underlines under it, the last line in their audited report, you find a profit. A profit that is consistent over the years. There have been a couple of years where St. Andrews lost money, but if you average the take over, or if you average the bottom line over any number of years, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, what you find is St. Andrews is in the black, and so is the Opera House, the YMCA, the Botanic Gardens, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, there's yet another not-for-profit on the peninsula that loses money every year, the ambulance service. But it gets a gift income from individuals and from each of the towns that results in, would you believe, profitability. The same kind of profitability that St. Andrews should be reporting.
No question.
Well, I contend that it's because of St. Andrews that Miles Memorial is still there. That, Miles actually last month lost $794,000 just in March. And I contend that it's because of St. Andrews that they're able to stay there. Without St. Andrews, we're looking at Miles is gonna close, 2 to 4 years later?
Probably 5.
Maybe, probably less. But,
Miles does not have local access.
no, right, that's right.
Yeah.
Plus Lincoln Medical Partners lost, $13 million this past year. That's a big number for that organization.
And it's hard to get perspective without contrast. The statement that Jim Donovan put in the paper about the $2 million over 12 years, let's just assert that he's correct and he's taking that information from somewhere. Well,
He's taking that, let me
Jim.
interrupt. He's taking that information, but not from the bottom line.
let's just assert that he's bringing that and it's rational. Well, $2 million, most people will stop most people in their tracks because none of us have $2 million. But $2 million over 12 years is $160 some odd thousand. I figured it out at one point in time just because I'm a numbers guy. $160,000 still seems like a lot because none of us make that much money. But $160,000 compared to the operating budget of Lincoln County Healthcare, which is 90 some odd $1 million, is less than a percent. It's like 0.18%. So I mean, there is a loss there that they're trying to account for, but it's a very insignificant amount, which could be caught up with fundraising dollars and most likely is.
Or possibly individual salary cuts.
Or the other, you
Cheaper pencils?
just deal with it on the cash
Executive
flow.
salary cuts.
Well, the point of talking about it is not when you really get down to it, the disagreement between Bill Karen and me has to do with whether the hospital on average loses $100,000 a year or makes $100,000 a year. That's really what it comes down to. My point is that amount of money is completely inconsequential compared to, for example, the $1.5 million a year it's going to cost to lose the critical access hospital designation. The only reason for focusing on it, from my point, is to demonstrate the fact that they are on a campaign to convince people that St. Andrews is not viable.
Absolutely.
And they are absolutely 100% wrong in their reporting of that of both lines that they've picked to report. What they should be reporting is the quote, once again, the bottom line, which shows that St. Andrews is and has been and can continue to be profitable.
$160,000, say roughly, can be made up with, cash flow. I mean, you can deal with that in your cash flow. So that's really, my mind, and that size of budget, $160,000 is inconsequential. I agree with that. And
Not to
there,
mention the fact that it is a not-for-profit hospital.
right. But there are things they can be doing down here that, what about wound care? I brought this up before, wound care, they're doing nothing. It all goes to Portland,
They are doing something. I took a patient yesterday,
Did you?
wound care, yes.
Okay.
But I think that's something new.
Wound care's been around for a long time, and that's an arm of home health. The home health nurses do the wound care. They have the clinic at the hospital 2 or 3 days a week.
Is that,
But-
And it's home health nurses who have taken special training. They're excellent, and
So I get 0
Yeah.
wound care.
they go to the homes and do that. Yeah, well, if, depending on the Medicare qualifications for having someone come to your home.
Stu, what's the revenue from wound care?
0. I've had, for March, this is Miles Memorial Hospital, but I got 0 budget, 0 projection for wound care.
That's, oh, okay, well, 'cause that's maybe because it's in home health.
Could you tell us what you're looking at?
I got a spreadsheet here of projections and budgets and variances for the month of March for Miles Memorial
Someone else,
Hospital.
not from St. Andrews.
Not from St. Andrews, right?
But that's, like I said, that's an arm of home health,
Yeah,
so
okay.
it's probably tucked in there somewhere.
Jump in there, kid.
I think, in relation to the public meeting that I think we're still talking about, but I was really disappointed at the end because I think to the people that came out that were interested in what the hospital was going to say, I think that they misled those people, and there were probably a lot of people there. There were a lot of us there that know to listen with a grain of salt, but there were probably a lot of people there that are going to take to their word what they said that night, and I think that they're foregoing a lot of the great suggestions that we've brought to them from viable hospitals all over the state of Maine, that they're discounting the suggestions that we had, and even I found it very offensive that they were basically threatening the community and saying that if the hospital took the suggestions that the task force are giving, you will have a more likely chance of dying. You will have not only a more likely chance of dying, but a much more likely chance of dying. And in fact, we'll go back 40 years in history to the death rates before any of the technology was developed in the last 30 years. It didn't make sense to me, and I found it just, again, really disappointing that people are going to listen to that presentation and say, okay, that's it. That's what we're gonna do.
And threats of use it or lose it.
Yeah.
That's not a projection, that's a threat. And I'm not fond of, yeah.
I found it immoral, the way they presented. I thought, because they divided the peninsula by there were some sweet people there that defended them. And I know that they use these people to present their side. And that's unconscionable, as far as I'm concerned. And I think they use even Mary Jo, because she's a sweet lady.
Yes.
A sweet lady who would do anything, and, they had her almost bamboozled. And that's sad. That's sad. People got angry about the way they presented themselves. And Bill Karen, he reminds me 20 years ago, because I was a nurse manager in a hospital, who a CPA got up and told me that I was not a company's person because I was more concerned about service than numbers. And that's what this has all come about. And it's immoral. I didn't see any compassion about people and humanity in that presentation. And that upsets me, that people like that are in control. And Bill Karen certainly announced himself as being in charge.
He was obnoxious.
He was.
Patty?
I only had the opportunity to see it on TV. I wasn't there in person, but my takeaway from seeing it on TV was that they did an excellent job. And that, that people who are not, as you said, Valerie, listening with, you know, the grain of cynicism or the grain of salt that we're used to, that we've become accustomed to, I think the takeaway message was that if you are worried about your, you know, being in an emergency situation where, you know, maybe a life or death matter, you want 7 people working on you in a trauma center, just like you see on TV in every medical show where they have all these doctors poring over every single patient. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, most of the stuff that happens to most of the people that's been reported to me and others is something that can be easily handled by an MD and a nurse practitioner and a tech and, you know, the people that we've already got available in the hospital. And if, you know, if it's worse than that, then they quickly stabilize the patient and move them on, or even, you know, make that determination at your home and, you know, put you on an ambulance to Maine Medical or something. So I think it was just all about scare tactics. Is what I took away was, oh my God, I would never want to go to this little dinky hospital because I won't have 7 professionals working on me if I need them. And I think they were very successful in getting that point across.
And Dr. Fleury's contention that he should be taken to Miles if he is seriously injured or ill here is misguided, shall we say. If he had a heart attack in the parking lot of St. Andrews, just for the sake of argument, because it's easier to figure the mileage, he would have to be transported to Miles for his team-based care, which according to Google Maps is 19 miles and 30 minutes. And that's not the place for him. The place for him is Maine Med. So he would then need to be transported an additional 64 miles and 80 minutes. Now, I know you guys drive faster than that, but and from St. Andrews, it's 59.6 miles and 76 minutes. So in what way is he better off going and getting his team-based care after half an hour?
Right.
And if he has a severe car crash in the parking lot of St. Andrews or is run over by a speeding ambulance, the place that he should be is Maine Med once again. And does Miles have a heliport?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, they do,
Actually,
they do.
Yeah,
It's in the back parking lot. Yeah.
Oh, okay, they have to get everyone with their cars.
I've been there when that happens. They call somebody to move their cars out there. So
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope there's no emergencies going on when that happens.
Yeah, or that nobody crashes into each other and needs medical care.
Hold that baby, ladies.
Yeah.
Right.
So it does not seem like, it almost seems like he's saying Miles, out of either ideology to the principle of team-based care, or loyalty to Lincoln County, because medically it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, I think it's designed to erode the reputation of St. Andrews.
Oh, I know, but
So
assuming that he is
it's
being
systematic.
semi-sincere, or I'm giving him credit for
Okay.
believing in this. It just, it just doesn't make sense road-wise or, because Maine Med is where you want to be.
The other thing that struck me is the solution that Lincoln County Healthcare employs for almost every roadblock that comes up at St. Andrews Hospital is to take away. They didn't have enough this or that, and so they took it away. They didn't then have enough whatever, and they took it away. And they continue to strip it away, and I think all of us here know that and can see very clearly what the path is down the road for this hospital and for the services that will continue to be stripped away. if we can't get them to see that there are other solutions to these problems, I mean, I'm not really sure what more we can present them with besides the gift-wrapped packages that we have dropped on them throughout this last 8 months of, you know, all of your hard work going to visit all those hospitals and the consultants that we hired, and at a, you know, great cost to our community members who all donated their money. It's shocking, and
Well, Valerie, I mean, it is the right thing to do, to strip all that away, if you want to move it.
Yeah.
If you want to move it to Portland or somewhere else. I mean, so systematically, they're doing what they want to do, to move all these procedures and everything.
And
to
move the
Portland.
good people too.
Right.
They're losing excellent people every day.
Yeah.
The nurse manager of acute care, whom I know well and respect greatly, left last week. And one other point that they failed to mention, Scott, am I correct in saying that an ambulance can only be used to take the patient to an emergency room? If you take them anyplace else, the patient has to pay, correct?
Well,
In general.
if it's a physician's office, there is no reimbursement by Medicare. It has to be to some sort of facility.
Like an urgent center, perchance?
Urgent, that requires a special waiver.
Okay.
And so it's a special permitting process to get around any of those regulations.
Mhm.
There's one in Jackman does it, and I think Carrie Dean also does it. But that's because there's literally no hospital
Gotcha.
hours away.
So if you have a patient who is unable to walk and needs to be transported to their doctor's office, you will not be reimbursed by Medicare for that or his insurance.
Correct.
So there is a value for the emergency room for people who are ill, who can call you and have you take them to the emergency room. And another value to the emergency room, which I don't know that anybody considered, is pharmacy services. I can't tell you how many times I have said to a patient who called me at 10 o'clock at night, look, you're gonna have to go to the emergency room. It's the only place you're gonna get medicine after Rite Aid closes on this peninsula. When it was Wheeler's, you used to be able to call Patrice for an emergency, and it better be a good emergency. And she would open up the store and give you the medication, such as, you know, morphine for the diet. But if you have something so simple as a bladder infection, there is no place on this peninsula to get medication for it. And anyone in this room who has ever had such a thing, okay, you're not going to die, but you're not going to be happy. And I doubt the pharmacy they're talking about opening is going to be a 24/7 operation. So that's another thing that we're going to lose with the emergency room closing, is the ability to be treated for minor ailments that may just require a prescription in the middle of the night.
Bruce?
Yeah, my take on Monday, which is, I guess, part of what we were doing, was just doing a reprise of the Monday that meeting. Was it a Monday?
Wednesday.
Was that I think this whole decision is a corporate financial decision primarily. They do deliver healthcare, and so it's in the context of that business, but it's a business, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and it's a business decision that they made, and they just pulled the old trick of cloaking a business decision in the clinical terms that they presented up on the stage, with a doctor fronting for them, who, you know, was personable, telegenic, well-spoken, and who was a rising star in that corporation. So, mark my words, he's probably the next Bill Caron.
Unless he gets an offer he can't refuse from, let's say, MGH,
So-
becomes the head of their medical, their emergency department.
So I was listening, I mean, to me, that was a charade, if that's the right word, primarily. I do think that a lot of the things that the doctor talked about are trends in medicine, no doubt about it. Those things could be good, perhaps, here, but one of the things that I keep hearing is that people here don't necessarily want that, and we together have worked out a different approach and a different set of solutions that we believe will work, and they're just not listening to us. And if we only had 3 to 5 years to show that we could make it work, we could present them a workable plan that would perhaps fit into their business model, because it wouldn't lose money, it might not make them a great deal. But, you know, they're $1 billion, I don't know what it is, but they're a huge corporation. One other observation was that we didn't talk much about the economic impact of their decision on the region there, and I don't know what the numbers are now after they've done all of their hemming and hawing, and they may have added some jobs back in as they subtracted some out. But the initial, or the last figures I had were that it was somewhere in the 20 to 30 jobs that were going to be lost. I don't know whether, has anybody got any updated figures on that? No, the last I knew was, dollar amount was something like a $1.5 million economic impact to this I peninsula. mean, and I think
And that
that
didn't
is
count.
probably a conservative economic impact.
No,
The region.
It's conservative in the sense that.
Yeah. Let me finish. The Boothbay region has something like, in the wintertime, 320 unemployed people, you know. It's a fairly high unemployment area. These are good jobs with benefits that are, if they're going away, then those are good jobs with benefits that are going away. We're not even talking about, never mind the healthcare impacts that we're talking about. And Right. we didn't talk a whole lot about the tax increases that are being imposed by this decision. We talked some, And those are higher paying jobs, like you said, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
If you go on the Lincoln County Healthcare website today, and you look at the jobs that are open on the St. Andrews campus, there's a caveat there that says that these will probably only last from 6 to 24 months.
really? Oh, that's interesting. Anyway, there is a noticeable economic impact if you add 30 people to, you know, a number of 300 that might be unemployed in our economic region, that's 10%. But they don't talk about that either, but we should be worried about that here on the peninsula.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would say that we're all pretty clear that we weren't terribly enthused with the meeting a couple of Wednesdays ago, that we might want to move on to the next topic.
I would agree. Yeah, I would say that some folks are still waiting for answers to their questions too.
Yes.
Yeah.
From that night. Next under reports, LD 1127, an act to establish hospital administrative district number 5.
Yeah, okay, so, thank you, Patty, I guess you.
Well, with help from Jim.
Yeah,
There
there's
are more
a
of
sheet.
those copies around somewhere that, yeah.
They get stuck somewhere.
There's a sheet going around that talks about how to testify in front of legislative committees, and so we'll get back to that in a second. Let me talk to you about the bill briefly, and the purpose of the hearing, which will be, it's now moved to 2 o'clock on the 10th. Because I've got a couple of other bills I've got to present in another committee before then, and I can't move those. The bill is 9 pages long, okay? But the committee that you're going to be, if you come to testify, the committee that you're going to testify in front of is state and local government. They're not a healthcare committee. They should not care, they do not care one iota about the content of what we need to care about. What this committee cares about, and all that we're asking them for, is the right to have a referendum here. That's the sole purpose of the hearing. We are to be the judges of whether or not this hospital plan is a good idea for us. They're not going to judge that. That's not the goal of the meeting. So, for example, on the summary of the bill, it says, this bill authorizes the voters of the town of Boothbay, the town of Boothbay Harbor, the town of Edgecombe, and the town of Southport to hold a referendum to establish a healthcare administrative district, a regional healthcare administrative district in Lincoln County. The vote of the towns must take place at town meetings in the town of Boothbay, the town of Boothbay Harbor, and at least one other town must approve the district by June 30, 2013, in order to establish this district. So if and when you come to testify in this bill, you don't need to talk, you can talk all about the history of how we got here and why we need to be able to take this vote. But you don't need to talk about any of the details of what we want to try to do here. The sole purpose of being in front of the committee is to say to them, State and Local Government Committee, we are here to respectfully request that you unanimously support our right to have a referendum on this topic on our peninsula, so that the citizens of our towns, cities and towns can decide for themselves whether they want a regional hospital district or not. So we're not there to debate them about whether, you know, St. Andrews should stay open or not. That's up to us. What we're there is to ask them for the right to have a referendum. So this bill establishes, if it were to pass, and I hope it will, it's a mandate on the towns, it's a mandate on the 4 towns. If we, the legislature, say that this bill will pass, it creates a mandate on the towns to have these referenda by June 30th of 2013. So it'll cost the towns whatever it costs to run an election, in the order of a few $1,000s, I guess, to run an election, Jim, I'm not sure, but so it becomes a mandate. The legislature is telling the towns, if we pass this, it's telling the towns, yes, you must have these, the citizens of these towns must have the right to decide whether or not they want to have this or not. So that's the whole purpose of doing this, okay? So if you are coming to testify, and if you want any help with testimony or anything, I can help you. It's really a very simple process. But let me just tell you just briefly.
Bruce, where is it gonna be, what?
It's going to be in room 214.
214.
In the cross office building, which is the building behind the State House. And if you are coming to testify, by the way, they're very friendly people. They don't bite. It's not an onerous process. It can be quite enlightening and kind of fun to you know, participate in the process. And I hope many of you-
2 p.m.
2 p.m. on April.
April 10th.
2 p.m., April 10th. Short is better than long, and I know I'm going on right now, but short is better than long in your testimony. If you have more than a typewritten page, 3/4 of a page, it takes 3 or 4 minutes, or less, that's about it. You know, that's all they need. What most committees do is they count how many people came and how on target their testimony was. If people ramble, if people come and talk about another issue, then the issue at hand, you know, you lose credibility. So anyway, the whole idea of this bill is we want the right, we're asking for the right to have a referendum here on our peninsula to decide whether or not we want to have a community health care district for ourselves. I'll read. The bill is 9 pages long. I don't know if you want to read the whole bill, but what it would do would be to allow us to create a public board of directors, publicly elected. And after some suggestions from a few people, I've changed the numbers. I can change them again. But the district would be governed by a board of directors elected from the towns, 4 from the town of Boothbay, 3 from the town of Boothbay Harbor, and 2 each from Edgecombe and Southwood. That gives a little more representation to the towns. That's 11-member board. I know I've had some suggestions about 1 from each town.
I would say this, Bruce, we started this thing off with 1 representative for each town, that we wanted to keep this as a unified idea, so that, you know, we weren't trying to create, and I certainly would have a real issue if we did this and we were doing this with one town having 4 and 1 3 and another. I don't think that's the way we ought to play this thing. I think it's going to do that. And this is just my opinion on the subject. if we're gonna go this way, I think the representation needs to be equal among the 4 towns,
So-
or the towns that are involved.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into a debate right now about that if you want to. The reason
Well, I'm
is
not
that-
looking for a debate, I'm just giving you my opinion.
Yeah, down the line, if votes were to come, if this were to be created and votes were to come up, that would say that the citizens of Southport with 600 and some voters have the same number of votes on an issue as the town of Boothbay with 3,000 and something. It's the one person, one vote aspect. Yeah, I mean, the proportional idea of the board is that it's closer to the idea of more one person, one vote than it is the situation we have here. And you could get into situations where the board would be voting on something that would be, cost money. It could happen. And so the question would arise, would people see fairness in a situation where each town only had vote, based upon the difference in population and the likely difference in usage of the healthcare facility? Whatever advice I get from you, I can still change this. I can change this up until the moment, we stand up in the front. But once they pass it out, it will be what it is. So we do need to be careful. Anyway, the other piece of this is, it says, in effectuating the purposes of this act, the district may initially operate a hospital and provide healthcare services from the existing St. Andrews Hospital and Healthcare Center campus in the town of Boothbay Harbor, as may be agreed upon between the district's board of directors and Maine Health, the owner of St. Andrews Hospital and Healthcare. So the idea here is, the understanding that we all have is that we do not have a hospital. We don't have one. So this says this district may operate a hospital if we can reach an agreement with the owners of the hospital, who are Maine Health. So we establish a district. The timeline is difficult because we know it's going to close as a hospital on October 1st. We've got to take a vote ahead of time if we're going to have this structure in place to be ready to do something, if we could be able Bruce, to manage it.
Would that give the Attorney General any more, leeway to do something about the board of St. Andrews Hospital?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. You mean ask the board to work with us or something like that?
Or even change the membership of the board because of this legislation?
I don't know. I can.
Would it give it a look more favorably upon us or something
I think the Attorney General is going to be guided by whether or not there are any laws that have been broken.
Well, that's what I was kind of questioning, whether maybe this law will give her another reason to, or a reason to step in.
I would think at the very least, it would say to the Attorney General that the region down here wants something different than what's currently there.
Yeah.
Because the region is saying it's broken and we want it fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's got to look at the law,
Yeah.
This gets
if we can
through
get-
committee, when would it go to the legislature?
Okay, so I've asked for an expedited process, and, I think I have a friendly audience with the committee people, so we've been somewhat expedited to get on to the 10th. I would ask that it be moved out of the committee as soon as possible and onto the floor of the House and Senate, if it gets out of the committee.
Yeah.
What we would like to have is a unanimous vote of the committee, because if we get a unanimous vote, there will be not no likelihood, but close to zero likelihood that anybody would say anything about it on the House or Senate floor, and it would go, as they say, under the hammer, boom, it's a vote. If we have debate from anybody on the floor, there are people from all over the state who know nothing about this, and all kinds of misinformation can get out there, as often happens in debate up there, as I've experienced over the years. So we would like to have a unanimous vote out of the committee, so that's what I'm hoping for. So it says you could operate a hospital. It talks about the boards, the board composition. It's publicly elected no matter what the numbers are. There are open meetings, the minutes are open, the board, everything is open and totally up to the people as to how this operates. A couple of 3 pages of the bill talk about how the board would go about issuing bonds, and it would have bonding power. It does not have taxing power. I took
Good.
that out of there because you all told me, no, that'll be a killer, so I took it out of there. The bonding power would only be used if, for example, this board decided it needed to build something. But I don't think, that's in there, it's almost boilerplate. But if it needed to build something, which I don't think is our goal, I think our goal is to manage something that already exists. Although if you look into the long future, if we ever got this going, and we're working with this, I mean, we might need to build something in some far distant future. So there are provisions in here for bonding, and how that would be done requires an open process, and it requires the agreement of 2/3 of the voters in all the towns in order to be able to issue bonds in order to go build something. So there are the usual standard protections that are built in there for putting us in any debt.
Bruce,
yes.
how about the discussion we had about the fact that we didn't want employees of the hospital serving?
Yeah, you'll have to show me where you saw that, Chuck. I agree with you on that, but
On the copy that I have, which is an old copy, it's on page 3, lines 7, 8, and 9.
page 3, lines 7, 8, and 9. Let's see if we've got the same
Said
thing.
there wouldn't be.
Each director may be paid $100. Oh yeah, the directors would be paid $100 each time they met. And the director may not be employed by the district. The treasurer may, in addition, be paid an annual salary. The treasurer, though, is,
If your treasurer is paid an annual salary by the hospital, they're therefore an employee of the hospital.
No, by the board, isn't it?
yeah, the treasurer is not a part of the board, though. Each year, the board of directors shall appoint a hospital administrator and elect a president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. These are staff.
They're not members of the board
No,
per se.
members of the board.
They wouldn't be voting members,
They're not voting members.
as I read this thing.
I will make
When I
sure
read
that
it.
that's covered in any case. Yeah, you're right, you don't want employees on.
No, what I'm saying, the way I'm reading this, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, it says the treasurer would be one of the directors. The treasurer may, in addition, be paid an annual salary. If they're paid an annual salary by the hospital for being the treasurer, they'd become an employee of the hospital.
It would have salaried employees, it would have an administrator, a vice president, a treasurer, and a secretary. Those would be paid staff.
Non-voting?
Non-voting.
Yeah, those are staff, those are not board members. The board members are elected by the community. They're elected people who stand for election. They are not, if there's any ambiguity about that, Chuck.
If the treasurer is paid staff and not a director, it shouldn't be listed under section 2, directors' powers and duties.
I'll clarify that with the people who wrote this up.
Okay.
But we don't want staff being on the board.
Right.
You've seen the problems with that.
Yes.
So I agree with you 100%. If the language is unclear, I will
Yeah, I see what you're
make sure
saying,
that
because
that's.
I didn't read that one, now I see what you're saying.
So the final detail that I would just tell you about with the bill, that this is, again, not stuff that you're going to have to say anything about in front of the committee unless, and I don't think anybody will ask you any questions about these details, but the last page of the bill talks about the fact that this whole structure is subject to a referendum, and the referendum will be held in each of the towns by June 30th. It specifies what will be on the referendum, which is a yes or no to the question, shall the act creating a hospital administrative district passed by the 126th legislature be accepted, yes or no? 2/3 of the voters in each of our towns have to accept that. That's a very high barrier, 2/3. And at least 15%, the voting population has to equal or exceed 15% of the votes cast for the last gubernatorial election in each of the towns. So, if 100 people voted for the governor in the last election in Town X, then at least 15 people are gonna have to have voted in this referendum, and at least 2/3 of them are gonna have to have said yes.
That's a tough one,
So
an
it-
off year too.
But, yeah, it's a, you know, we're gonna have to,
Yeah.
if we go forward, we're gonna have to get the troops out.
Right.
Is it
But it's-
two-thirds
that's-
of the people voting
Yeah.
or two-thirds of the registered
No,
voters?
2/3 of the people voting. But, and it has to be at least 15% of people, the total has to be 15% of the gubernatorial number who voted in the previous gubernatorial. Okay, so that's some number for each town, it's gotta be at least that number, and at least 2/3 of them have to say yes. There's another couple of wrinkles here, and you can tell me whether this is right now is the time for you to give me advice on this. The biggest wrinkle is that, let me see where I see it here, I just want to make sure I'm saying it right. That at least this whole thing falls apart, I don't see where it is, if the towns of Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor together do not accept it. And
So they both have to accept
Yeah,
it.
Boothbay and Boothbay Harbor would have to accept it,
And
and
one of
either
Southport.
Southport
yeah,
or
and either
Edgewood.
Boothbay or Southport, but not both.
So,
So the idea was to create it wouldn't make any sense without a critical mass.
right.
If you think of the two towns as a critical mass.
No,
So
my
that
question
puts
is,
another burden on this whole process.
can this 15%, I mean, I know like to do a petition to get on a warrant in town meeting, all you need is 10%
Right.
of the registered voters. Can that be changed to 10?
I will check with the people, you see, the way these bills get created is we've got legal experts who do these things.
Yeah.
I have not checked with the person who wrote this to find out if the 15% was her invention or whether it came from the law. If it's her invention, we'd go to 10.
And the other question is that 15% in each town or 15% of the total vote?
I believe it's 15% equals or exceeds 15% of the total votes cast for all candidates for government in the town. That's preceding gubernatorial. So it's a different number for each town.
Town, just for an example, town of Bay, 15% of the last gubernatorial election would have been 281.
How many?
281.
So we'd have to have at least 281 people in Boothbay
Now-
voting.
Now, the next question is with 2/3, does that include 2/3 in each town or 2/3 of all the people voting?
2/3 in each town.
Okay.
And why is it 2/3? Is one
Because
of
they're
the...
That's a
making it
matter of
difficult.
law on
Yeah,
these.
majority.
They want to make sure that people want this, there can't be any
I
question.
believe the supermajority is required when you're creating one of these extra, what do you call them, extra,
Well, it seems to me that there's a fundamental difference between an organization that can have tax, that imposes tax liability on the towns and one that doesn't. And I'm concerned whether what we're doing is sticking ourselves with the 2/3 based on the assumption that there is a tax liability imposed, when in fact...
I'll check it out, Tom. I mean, I will review that with my analyst. I've got a meeting set up with her in the next couple of days, so.
A couple more questions for you, Bruce. Where I am working off an old one, and you have a newer one, has anything been done about if a town wanted to withdraw in the future? Because I know we talked about section 12, which is dissolution, but if a town wanted to withdraw, not that I think that they'd want to, but they should have that right, without being held hostage by the rest of the towns.
It does, by the way, there is on that topic, there is a section saying that other towns may join.
Yeah, and that's going to be my next question.
Yeah, other towns can join later on if they want. I will check with her on the, if a town wants to get out, what do you do?
Okay, and when other towns join, how do their directors get apportioned? That's not in here yet.
Okay, so a couple questions. Again, we'll work these details out. What I want to emphasize, a couple things. It's really good for large numbers to come. Not, we don't have to have the whole town come, but it's really good for a lot of people to come.
and say, it's really good to have a lot of people saying a couple words than it is one person saying, a lot. It's really good to have a lot of people. That's what impresses committees is, wow, the people of Booth Bay Harbor and Southport and Edgewood must really want this, or 50 people or 100 or whatever. That's the way they think, that's the way I think. I mean, I see it happen all the time. So if you can get there, it will be great. And the testifying is easy. The people who you're testifying in front of are just ordinary citizens like you who are elected to do that job, and some people get nervous, but it shouldn't make anybody nervous.
Remember, they work for you.
Yeah, it should be an enjoyable and interesting experience. So I'm hoping that a lot of people from Booth Bay, and not only people here, but people listening, will make a decision to come. I know it's hard because some people are working and you've got other things going on.
Margaret?
Our committee is working on, we're looking into renting buses. And we plan to leave the parking lot here on that morning. We had said 11:30, but now we've got another hour. So, but we'll announce any kind of transportation that we have. And I think there's a gimmick where if not everybody who goes needs to speak, but the last person or one of the persons of us who speak can say, may I ask that the people who came with us all stand? That's something that we use periodically.
If you've got so many people that it's going to take 6 hours worth of testimony, it might be good to do that.
You can.
The other thing you can do is you can just come up and say, I'm here, I agree with everything that's been said, we want this right to vote, thank you very much. Put it down and that's it, that's all you have to say.
Would it be appropriate, there are some of us, I have a planning board meeting that night, so I can't. So-
That's a good point, they'll accept written
Could
testimony.
we have something that we can come in and sign that can be handed to the committee?
The best thing for you to do, anybody who's listening and who can't be there, who wants to submit testimony, is to write it down, write it out, and probably get it to
Well, just-
Margaret.
They'll take an
Just that
email
we
too.
support-
They will take an email.
They will.
Um,
I've done this last couple of weeks, Bruce, on
Yeah, I don't
legislation.
have the
Take it.
committee, I should have had the committee clerk's information here, but all you need is the committee clerk's email. The committee clerk will then get your testimony to everybody on the committee.
We can put that up on our website. We have this running. For anybody who wants to read it, you can find it on our website. And we can get all that information. The website gurus are in the back there.
Just make sure you put your name and stuff like that, sign it with your,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I read the bill compiled, and one of the things that came out was the directors have a right to provide a reduced rate schedule for the citizens of the towns which are members of the hospital district. And I think that's a really, really important point. And this is something I think that the hospital up in Dover, Foxcroft, they had that too. On the other side of the coin, I don't know, maybe I have an old copy, but I noticed that there's a provision there for towns giving, they call it voluntary contributions to make up any loss to the hospital during the hospital's operations during the year. Is that still in there?
Yes, it is, and indeed, that's a good point, thank you, John, for that. The hospital, there's a section on hospital finances in here, and the institution that would be run by us would get its ordinary income through fees for service, just like any healthcare organization. But it could also take in charity donations, and it can also go to the citizens of the towns for gifts. The way, gifts isn't the right word, but you know the way the ambulance service comes to each of the towns and asks for a
Donations. Donations.
donation.
Yeah.
Fancy word for a gift, I guess. So the hospital could also accept gifts from the town that way, as well as from any charitable. And John, thank you for bringing that other thing up. It could also offer reduced rates for services for member towns, peoples from member towns.
Skip?
Bruce, you referred to Lincoln County Health as the owner?
No, Maine.
Maine Health.
Maine Health is the owner, aren't they the operator rather than the
No.
owner? They own our hospital?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think we're establishing any ownership rights by saying it here, but it's my understanding that they are the owners, which is a sad fact, but true.
St. Andrews Hospital is a corporate asset of Lincoln County Healthcare. All of Lincoln County Healthcare's assets are corporate assets of Maine Health.
Mike?
One last quick observation. Maine Public Broadcasting broadcasts these hearings all day long. They repeat them at night. It's kind of, I find it interesting. But in order to put yourself at ease, I suggest you tune in and watch them for half an hour so you know what the room looks like, you know what the podium looks like, you know what the committee seating arrangement is. You can tell how to adjust the microphone, so you're more confident. Again, they repeat these at night. Whatever one you happen to tune into would probably be pretty interesting. But it's on the 3rd MPBN station. I don't know what it is on cable. but-
181.
181.
That's fine.
So it's a good idea just to review that for a little.
Don't forget to sign in.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that when we move on, that we go right to brass, so these guys can not have to hang out here the rest of the night.
Could I just ask one final question? Does the task force want me to adjust the board member numbers, or you want to go?
I'd like to see the 15% and the 2/3 addressed.
I will address that, but the one question that no one else can answer but you and us is, what's the composition of the board that we want to create?
The numbers
For,
from the
for
town.
me, it's one person, one vote, and it should be weighed by population. And I do understand Smith's point completely. Sitting here, we're all one each from the town, but I think if we're gonna create a district, it should be based on population.
But I know what he's saying. It's, you've got a larger community that might, but in this case, there's no taxing. So, I don't know, I'm up in the air on that one, but my first thought was one person, one vote. That's a good way to organize the, but if you're talking about taxing, which we're not, I wouldn't want to see one community force another one into a tax situation, but we're not talking about that, so. I don't know, Smith, I'm sorry.
Well, I made my statement clear. You guys can do what you want. That's what's the great thing about this country. You have the right to be wrong.
That's why you all need to go to the Southport Town meetings. Having done that this year, I can tell you, I know why he's speaking like he is.
Well, you know, without the taxing situation, I don't see why Smith's, makeup wouldn't work.
It would work.
Yeah, sometimes, so. I mean, I'd go with either.
Well, then go with mine.
If anybody has any opinions, let me know before this goes to press.
I might have missed an important part of this, but so if it all passes and the referendum passes and we decide to create the hospital administrative district, what's the next step that happens after that?
Well, if this passes, the 4 towns must hold a referendum on this.
I mean, if all the towns
So
pass.
then the referendum goes forward,
Yeah.
and then you will, each of the towns will hold an election, and I'm not sure that where the words occur on that, but you'd hold an election to elect your representatives to the board probably at the next election. I guess that's an issue that we ought to address.
I would recommend,
Yeah.
if You're gonna
You're gonna
hold a
need it before
referendum to
October
create the district, that you hold the election the same time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have absolutely no time if it
Well,
does pass.
that's why it's being done this way, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, then we have to get nomination papers out, and that could be kind of tricky if you get in nominations for a position that hasn't been created yet. I think my clerk would beat me over the head if I tried to do that while I was.
I know mine would, and she's handy by.
So, I need to read my own section here. The members must be elected by popular vote at the annual town meeting of each town, except as provided in this section. The member's term of office is blah, blah, blah. In the first year of organization, elections may be held at the annual or special meeting in which the towns elect to join the district. So it's at the same meeting
Okay.
for the first year of organization.
Do we know when this is gonna get voted on, when it's gonna go on the floor?
Well,
Assuming
we've
it
already asked that
passes
question.
committee?
He said as soon as you can get it there, but that, you know what that means.
yeah, no, so it'll be heard on the 10th. The committee usually gives a week or two before it votes. It's only hears on the day we, except in rare cases.
So, by the 24th, it'll go out of committee, hopefully, is what you're saying?
Yeah, probably.
And then,
Before then.
and then, let's say for sake of argument, it goes out of committee, ought to pass to the floor
It'll get up to the floor by the 1st of May, let's say.
1st of May, and when do you
They've
think?
got 60 days to organize and run an election.
So, if it goes to the floor on the 1st, would it get voted on that day, or?
All kinds of things can happen up there.
All right. Use your
So,
influence to get
I'll
them
be
to
there to
schedule
try to make
it
a
earlier?
move.
I'm sorry?
And, I think there are plenty of friends of us. We have plenty of friends who understand, once they hear what our problem is, they'll understand the situation that we're in, and I think they'll try to move it as fast.
Do we have another hurdle?
At the end of the day, guys, let's say everything goes perfectly. This thing blows through all the committees, it gets voted on, it gets passed. We have our elections, everything goes to exactly the way we want it to go. We vote together this great board we have, we still don't have a hospital. Okay, just understand it, that passing all this is gonna be wonderful and great. It establishes our ability, not our reality. So we still have to go out and figure out a way to get the hospital into the hands of this group. So be clear on
But it
that.
doesn't put it all in the hands of the people duly elected by the people.
It would if we can get over that one huge hurdle.
Well, I think we just occupy it.
There is an occupation option. Yeah.
By the way, the lobbyists for Maine Health have been slightly all over me for the last few days, so they want to meet with me, and I'm saying, fine, I'll talk with you.
I was just gonna say, how many lobbyists do they have?
I recommend we move this along, brother.
They have
I agree.
one high-powered lobbyist and probably more.
Well, I gotta tell you, and Bruce can back me up on this one, is if you go up there as an unpaid person lobbying for this, it weighs a lot more than someone who's paid.
Absolutely.
That you count more.
Sorry, I just said that.
Nope, that's fine.
They're more than Kenny, or they think they've got a landslide.
Scott, anything new to update us on?
Can I just say one thing before Scott does? I want to thank Bruce for all the work he's done on
Thank you, Patrick.
We continue to be planning with Lincoln County Healthcare for a transition. We've been doing some work with the telemedicine component that they have installed in our ambulances to figure some ways that we might be in closer communication with physicians in the emergency room down here at St. Andrews. So that's where our focus remains. One of the things that did come out of the public forum that I wasn't able to attend because of a conflicting meeting is that there was some mention about a fourth ambulance, and I just wanted to make it very clear that we do have a fourth ambulance. When we purchased the new one this past fall, we did keep the trade-in value of the old ambulance. It's not equipped, it's not ready to respond to calls yet. It's in a reserve capacity, so if we do have an ambulance that's out of service for a day or so, we do take it out of the garage, restock it, license it. So we do have a fleet of 3 ambulances with 1 in reserve. So I think there was some sort of insinuation inadvertently made that we have 4 ambulances ready to go. We have 3. Our intention is in the future to stock that 4th ambulance, but that's about $5,000 worth of medical equipment and the defibrillator, which is another expense. And our intention is to move in that direction, especially if St. Andrews does close, to keep 4 ambulances available. Right now, we have 3 with 1 in reserve. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to everybody that there is not 4 ambulances ready to roll at any given moment of the day.
Could I ask you a question? Are you as excited about the, is it an iPad that you have as Dr. Foray seems to be?
Well, I am excited about it for a broader application. I think that if anything happens in this peninsula with healthcare, this is one way that may give us the assurance to do some expansion of our scope of practice, so that whether Lincoln County Healthcare does close St. Andrews or not, we do have some additional backup, so that if we want to do things with thrombolytic drugs, so that heart attack patients, like Dr. Oliphant said, instead of going to Miles and then turning around and going to the cath lab down in Portland, that maybe with this sort of live online with a cardiologist, the emergency room physician, that we might be able to start to bring some of those treatments into the field, and everyone will kind of buy in, saying, yeah, this isn't just a trained paramedic and an EMT that's going out on their training. We actually can see the patient, and so there's some other technologies that we can kind of bring in with our defibrillators that we have now that will link up software-wise with the emergency room, with main cardiology down in Portland. So combining all that, we're also working on the critical care transport on a regional approach with some of the other ambulances in the area, so that if there is an acutely ill patient that is above the specially trained paramedics that we have now, but not a candidate for life flight or an overuse of life flight, or if they're not flying, that we will have the pilot project in place to do that. And that's what we received a grant to do that, and we're kind of ahead of the curve on that. So there's a bunch of things that it's not our intention to use this as a way to fast track closing the emergency department. This is a way that no matter what direction healthcare goes in this peninsula, it's going to make things better. And that's
Sounds
how
exciting.
it is. We've used it quite a few times already. It's a great tool already.
Do you lose reception on the,
So far, no. In fact, the other night, we were unable to reach the emergency department by our cell phone, but even though the iPad is through Verizon as a cell phone, we had better reception, so it actually has enhanced our communication.
I don't know if you can answer this, but does the emergency room have these iPads?
St. Andrews does, yes. Yep, they have.
So in other words, they're in touch with every doctor they want to be in touch with. Am I right?
What they are is, they have provided us with 4 iPads for each of our 4 ambulances, even though we have 3 on them. They're all equipped now with the iPad, and their nurses station, physician station down there has one. Miles does not. And in fact, at the state level, they were talking about the trauma planning was having a real hard time finding a software platform and a way to communicate hospital to hospital. Like the trauma center at Maine Med can't really communicate well telemedicine-wise to Penn Bay or Miles, and they use this as an example of something that is working that might tie in all these hospitals together. So that's a good thing of the system that's coming out.
Can you get patients' medical records available to you on this?
No. We're not linked into any other systems like hospital IT systems at all. We're behind the curve on that. Not sure when that's going to be coming. We're just last 4 years, we've gone into electronic report. And that's hosted and provided for a nominal fee by the state. So some of the software is tricky to use.
Scott, what's the training curve on learning how to use the iPad? You said that St. Andrews has it now, but Miles does not. How long would it take for them to get up to date with the iPad to be able to communicate with you in room?
Days or weeks. I mean, it's basically, it's a secure link with, if anybody's familiar with an Apple product, FaceTime, it's a secure link with FaceTime. That's HIPAA compliant, so anybody that uses their cell phone to talk with their grandkids or family members from out of state through the Apple product of FaceTime, that's pretty much what it is. So it's just a matter of calling in, and now it's a video link instead of just voice on.
Cool.
Thank you. Community Hospital Work Group. Evening, Dan.
Hi, Chuck. Contrary to what some people may think following the Opera House meeting, we're not dead yet. The working group that I represent met a week ago following the Opera House meeting, after we spent some time dissing the meeting. We came up with the following decision. And it's based on the overwhelming desire of the community to keep the hospital open. The emergency room open not 12 hours, but 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And because the community is so supportive and so desirous of this, we felt that it was our responsibility to support their efforts. And as a result of this, we're in the process of reorganizing the effort to carry on the good work of you guys. We have formed a foundation which is called the Boothbay Region Health and Wellness Foundation. And this foundation is already registered with the state and incorporated. And we're working on making it a 5013C corporation. The mission of the foundation is, keeping the community healthy. And while we will focus on, we don't intend this to be a short-term project. We will focus on long-term programs, organizations, what have you, in accordance with this mission. Anyway, but while we have long-range plans for this foundation, our immediate concern and goal is to keep the hospital open and the emergency room functioning 24/7. The foundation will be public, and membership is open to residents, visitors, and anyone who has a tie to the Boothbay region. We will, that's basically where we are with it at this point in time. And we will keep you informed of the progress that we're making. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them or hand it off to someone that can.
I'd like to say that I give you guys high marks for taking the initiative to move forward on this, because I know that we as a task force have been having conversations about where do we go. We were formed kind of out of the mist and out of necessity. I'm proud of where we've gone and what we've done, but I also know we're coming to the end of our usefulness, I think, at some point. And that is precisely what we need for this region, is the ability to have a local driven group who's concerned about the health and wellness of this entire region. And I congratulate you guys for where you've gone with this, because it's exactly what we need, in my opinion.
Amen.
I think it's great.
One of the things that I put in the information packet for the task force members is just a little thought of mine, and I do that a lot. I just throw it out on paper and they tell me when I'm way off base. But and I think the title of the memo, like, what's next? And really at this point in time, we don't know what's next. We have a few things in the works. We have the town meeting vote that's going to be going on. But what are we working on after that? Well, we need to start thinking about, we talked about this a few months ago, is what is mission complete? And for the task force, mission complete might be, we've gotten to the end of usefulness for the task force, and it's time to hand that reign over to somebody that can carry it the rest of the way. Because as a task force, we're only supposed to work in short bursts on a task, and eventually we'll lose our appointment and support from our towns to work unilaterally. And in a foundation, they have a lot more flexibility. So I threw the memo together, and I just, wanted to kickstart that conversation, which doesn't have to happen tonight, but can happen anytime, is what is going to be mission complete, and when do we wrap up, and when do we start measuring those items? Because we'll lose Valerie shortly. We'll ask for, we'll be to the point that we're asking for reappointments from our selectmen shortly. So there isn't a better time than now. And I get to participate in one of their meetings this morning, and I told them that part of wrapping up in my mind, and I'm just speaking just unilaterally once again, is passing that that consciousness of this topic onto the next avenue. And I can easily see that people would change titles in a different vehicle. I can easily see Chuck carrying this on beyond the task force. Valerie's obviously passionate. Smith, everybody here would probably just take a different role in a different vehicle. But it's obviously, we have to be sensitive to the fact that people recognize what, matter of fact, you can't even go to another community and say task force without somebody thinking about this task force. There's a resonance with that title right now. So we want to make sure that resonance gets passed on, and that the people that are passionate on the topic are still passionate when the vehicle changes. So I'll get off of that subject. We should be aware that we're going to come up on some timeline hurdles here shortly.
Patty?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm hoping that more of the people in TV land will join the effort as we broaden it, because really what we're trying to do is to focus. There have been multiple committees, subcommittees working groups working, and if we can continue to work in groups around particular projects, whether it's mental health or keeping the ER open, or substance abuse, or healthy kids, all the different things that people care passionately about right now. I think our main mission is let's keep the ER open. But there's a lot to be done, a huge amount to be done, and we have all these people who've been coming every Tuesday night, and now every other Tuesday night, and I hope we'll continue that cadence, but also get more people kind of coming out of the woodwork to join in this this effort, because this is important to all of us, and that's why we want to keep going.
Well, one of the things that some of us get, everybody here gets all the time, is people from the community coming up to you and saying, thank you so much for all the work you're doing for us. And what we'd like to say now is, join us. We have a vehicle. We would like the membership to include people from all walks of life in the community. We're making no distinction about who can be a member of this group. And I do have to say, I personally would like to say that to Lincoln County Health, that several times recently, at the meeting on Wednesday night, they said we would like to work with the community. Several times this has come forward, and we see this as a vehicle to be able to respond to their requests that we work with them.
Absolutely.
So we'll have that.
We're here and we're not going anywhere.
That's right.
All right. I hope that many, many more people take you folks up on your offer of joining, because this isn't a subject that's going to go away anytime.
We'll find you in the vegetable department.
You're right.
So the Boothbay Region Health and Wellness Foundation, when will they be having regular meetings?
Yes.
And when will those start, or have they started?
We're still working on it.
We're
We'll be back in touch.
organizing it right now.
Okay.
Waiting for us to get out of the way.
Well, that's, I guess, leading to my next question, which is, when will these task force meetings come to an end? Without sounding like I'm hurrying anything, but we have one more meeting before our town meeting. We have one more regularly scheduled task force meeting before the town meetings. And I think your memo to us here has a lot of great action steps, and what I see is our job is to report back to our fuller boards on what the task force did, and I think that accomplishment kind of paper, checklist of what we've done, and I think part of that, and a great part of that, is the Health and Wellness Foundation springing off. It's a huge part of what came out of this task force. But what's our timeline?
I'm gonna speak for the town of Boothbay with my boss right across me. He can glare it right when I step out of line. But I think that because the town of Boothbay has put a lot of effort into making sure that the task force gets launched and created everything that it has become, that I think we would continue the effort to make sure the transition. So administrative support, space, storage, until the foundation became self-sustaining, with obviously at the discretion of the selectmen. So I mean, I could easily see it becoming we probably use the footprint of what the task force has created to keep some continuity until everybody feels comfortable in that new venue.
Well, we have other organizations around town that use this meeting space to meet, so I wouldn't see that there would be an issue with the Wellness Foundation continuing to use this space.
Yeah, based on the fact that, and what Valerie's referring to is, I said, well, the best way that I can see, and this is just my thoughts spilling out on paper, to transition, is we need to, the task force, at the end, whenever that is, if that's imminent or if that's way down the road, needs to resolve formally that this is what we thought we were tasked with doing, this is what we did, and this is what we want to see going forward. And now part of that resolution should be the passing of the torch, saying that what we see going forward, and I'm speaking without them making any judgments, is the handing off to this Wellness Foundation to carry on not only the current topic, but future topics as it relates.
With the full support of the towns as needed. I mean, the thing that we have been somewhat hamstrung with sometimes is being able to deal with Maine Health in a non-public setting. We can't do that. You guys would be able to do that. that might be able to find some common ground that we haven't been able to find. I don't know, but I know that it's been problematic for us as public officials sometimes, how we handle the circumstances, so that could be a plus.
Yeah, we couldn't organize a sit-in at the hospital either, so.
We may participate, but we could not organize.
Did you tell them how much tents we bought the other day?
Well, I would suggest maybe that we add something to the agenda formally for the next meeting, talking more about this and.
Yeah, I think it's time to have an open well, we are having an open discussion about it. And I think it's, again, the task force was born of need. It was born of a necessity. And I think what we've accomplished collectively has been nothing short of amazing. But I do think there's coming a point where the people need to take us over and not us as town officials. And I do think it's coming, as I've said in the past, I think it's coming sooner rather than later. Not that I won't still be involved, because I will, but I do think it's time for us to change the focus of this to you guys and not to us. So maybe it's time to think about this happening within the next meeting or two.
The thing that I would do is if we did do a final resolve for the town of Booth Bay, is I'd bring that to the Booth Bay selectmen and then say, I think you also should resolve to support that resolution. You're taking the full credence of that political body and putting it behind an idea. The town does resolutions on topics that are less important to the public than this one. So it just puts that back into the political leaders behind it.
Well, we've only got one scheduled meeting between now and our meeting. There is a fifth Tuesday of this month, which would be the, whatever that is.
30th.
So we could maybe clarify and put things to bed on that date and have it be officially done then, just for what it's worth, throwing that out there.
Assuming the next meeting is 4/13 and not 3/19? 4/16.
16.
Today's
2/16/30.
Yeah.
2 weeks from later, the 16th.
We could digitally start brainstorming.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Okay.
In the meantime,
4/16.
data analysis.
Yes. Mike, anything new from data analysis?
Nothing for public consumption.
All right. Volunteer coordinator.
It was Fran for a little while, but I don't see Fran here, and I know he was gonna pass it off. I put together the agenda without contacting anybody whether they have reports, so I'd say we don't have one right now.
Financial and fundraising.
In your information packets, I just jumped on financial, I didn't know if there's fundraising. In your financial packets is the standard report that for the account that the town of Booth Bay is hosting for the St. Andrews Task Force. You can see the balance is $11,072.78. All debts have been paid. The task force is whole right now.
Okay. How about the second opinion fund?
Just let me ask one question.
Okay.
Can that money be transferred over to this wellness?
No, that goes to DRAS.
Okay, that's all.
Yep.
That's just a little deal.
Unless you decided to give a gift to each of the towns to support the cost of having the special election to pass the legislation.
It's not a horrible idea, is it?
Yeah.
We shall give that due consideration.
There's precedent for giving gifts to the towns to support things.
It certainly is. As long as we do it in the parking lot before the meeting.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would just, while we have this big audience too, but I would counter is that I know firsthand that the ambulance service fundraising efforts have really been hampered by this topic, because people have been given to the task force and the second opinion fund instead of the ambulance service, so we ought to be cognizant of that.
Amen.
Question.
Yes?
Under this new foundation, I understand that you're filing to become a 501c3. there's certain paperwork and costs involved with that. Who is absorbing those costs?
Well, the original incorporators, which were 3 or 4 of us, paid for the original filing. And then the foundation, as it moves ahead, we're hoping to have donations to help defray our costs. And we're also transitioning the second opinion fund into the foundation.
So the people who donated to the second opinion fund, we thought they were supporting the hospital, are now going to have their money supporting you.
They'll still be supporting the same Save St. Andrews effort. That's what it will be used for.
All right, anything else under financials and fundraising?
I can tell you what we have in the second opinion fund.
Yep.
Okay.
We have $10,269.47.
One more time?
$10,269.27.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, old business, discussion on town meeting warrant.
I wasn't sure if it was relevant, but obviously we have a town meeting coming up. For the town of Booth Bay, it's question 3 by referendum. So when, if you're a Booth Bay voter and you go to vote on May 6th, question 3 will be that question. So a yes is in support of of maintaining the critical access hospital status of St. Andrews. A no is not support.
Valerie, it's set up the same way in the harbor, isn't it?
That's correct.
And Stu, how did you guys go?
We haven't written it yet.
It's a referendum in Booth Bay Harbor too.
I'm confident all of you will follow the same standard as Southport.
All right, our next meeting will be on April 16th.
Sorry about the typo on there.
That's all right. We'll forgive you this time. Public comment? Jane?
I just would report on the Attorney General's letters. We've crossed the 1,000 mark. We have 1,100 letters. Still into the 2,000. I'm not going to give up until we get to 2,000, but the envelope up here is just a little bit empty. So if we could all just dig a little bit deeper and think of an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor or a relative out of town, pick up copies, please. We had 80 of them mailed in. So they received 80 by mail. That's very encouraging. So that's all. And Marie signed up some new businesses. So their businesses are being really supportive. It's just great. It's great.
You want me to just read the original, did we ever
Go ahead.
read the old one?
Yeah, read it all.
Pardon me if I'm repeating. Southport General Store, Southport Library, Video Loft, Booth Bay Region Greenhouse, Eventide, Sheer Artistry Hair Salon, John Edwards, Silver Lining, Grover's Hardware, who has really been supportive, Mama D's, Pat Farron and Sons, Booth Bay Harbor Framers and Gallery, Harbor General Store, Hawk Motors is really doing their job. We have Dr. Oliphant, Harbor Realty, Mr. C's been doing very well. I added Booth Bay Harbor Library, House of Pizza, and Dr. J. Andrews.
So that's very good.
Thank you.
It's really helpful.
Didn't mention River and Farm again.
No? Oh,
River's End. Turned it.
And River's End, yes, I had that listed, but has anyone collected from there?
no, I haven't yet. I think they drop them in the envelope, right?
Yeah, brought it into Jim.
Yeah, I think they just keep dropping them in.
Very good, okay.
The other thing I'd like to do is thank Pat Farron. He's moved our big heart twice, so all you have to do is call him up and he's on board. He's amazing, and I thank you, Pat. That's no easy task, that huge heart getting that around town. And Ernie Carver made all the small hearts that we have that say vote yes, that we'll be using at the voting thing. So, and that was, we had 6, and I said, can we have 6 more? And they were done within 2 hours. So it's just like ask for what you need and you get it. So thank you. Thank you for everybody that's helping with the cause. And I have just one, is this public forum?
Sure, jump right in there, darling.
I just have another thing that I'd like to share with everybody. It's an article that was in the Bangor Daily, and it's how profitable our main hospitals. It depends on whom you ask. And it sort of shares some of the same concerns that Tom has. So I wanted to validate that a little bit. And this is a Bangor legislator and a physician who's frustrated by the lack in hospital financings, has set its sights on better or more comprehensive reporting, calling nonprofits, hospitals, tax documents a sham. Bruce, you might know.
I know.
You do know this legislator, okay. Under hospital financial health, it says determining just how financially healthy main hospitals are is no simple feat. As in the case of hospitals in many other states, various financial metrics can yield widely and with different results. Operating margins are an indicator of how efficiently hospitals run. While most hospitals, main hospitals, have nonprofit status and don't pay taxes, margins can be considered a measure of profitability. Additionally, operating margins are just one measure of financial health. They largely reflect how much money hospitals make or lose from treating patients, their primary function. Some hospitals, however, especially the larger ones in more urban areas, also bring in sizable amounts of cash through other areas, such as endowments and investments. Citing the lack of transparency, Jeff Gratwick, he's a rheumatologist and a state senator from Bangor, plans to introduce a bill which will make the state agencies and some other entities publicly accountable for analyzing hospital financial data. Hospitals' Forms 990s, which most tax-exempt organizations must file with the Internal Revenue Services, he said, are a sham. 990s are good at hiding the truth. While he didn't accuse hospitals of deliberate insincerities in filing out tax forms, Gratwick said the information is so obscure that the average person can't understand it. Gratwick added that it is difficult to consider hospital nonprofits considering the salaries of some of the employees earn. The whole concept of nonprofit has been distorted, he said. This will get all the CEOs highly irritated. But I don't think that you could call a community organization a nonprofit when the salaries of the CEOs are 6 and 7 figures.
Amen.
Yeah. So
So this is something for us to follow too. We're gonna just all be marching on Augusta for the next 5 years. So this is,
that's online, Jay.
yes, it is online. Oh, it is on our site? You girls are so good, my God, it's hard. Thank you, I just wanted to share that and validate that for Tom. He's, so there you go.
Just a quick on legislative action that's going on, just a reminder that the Attorney General has a bill in that would make hospital board meetings open to the public.
Yeah.
I have a bill in that would make hospital bylaws and the meetings of board meetings public, the minutes of board meetings public. So these bills have traditionally fared badly because MH, the Maine Hospital Association, has got lots of lobbyists and people are afraid of the backlash. Legislators are, I think, because of the backlash that big employers like hospitals have in their area. But if we can get people up there to sort of help in the same way that we talked about in this other bill for our own hospital, it would help.
Where are
Well,
those,
just-
where are those bills now? Are they in?
I don't know. I could get information to you so you could put it out on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just as we have with this one here, we have a date and a time when we should be up there to testify.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about those dates and times as
Yeah,
well.
I'll see what I can find out. Keeping track of something like 1,800 bills is hard.
All right.
Just a logistical question, for those of us who are going to Augusta on April 10th, because we're not having another meeting before then, I recommend that we plan to meet in this parking lot for people who want to carpool at, say, 12:30. But anybody who wants to, if we need to get a bus, or if we want to, kind of, people who need rides, feel free to send me an email, and I'll try to coordinate, psiebold@customers.com.
A recommendation that I'd like to make, use the vet hospital, the old vet hospital property as
Okay.
much as possible for parking.
Yep.
Because if we
Okay.
send a whole lot of people up and they fill up all the parking spaces, the business office won't have any parking
Right.
spaces to use.
What parking lot are you talking about?
The old vet hospital.
I don't know.
Oh,
what
yeah.
that is.
The old
animal
Lupe
hospital.
animal
Oh,
hospital.
the animal.
Animal hospital.
I didn't hear that.
You can't win.
Where the sign is.
Tom?
I just want to make one comment about postscript about last Wednesday's meeting. There were two, I think, very significant things said from the stage. One was by Jim Donovan, who corrected me when I said that the assumption was that this wasn't going to cost anything. He said, they never said that. And he's right about that. They never did. On the other hand, they also never said what it would cost. They have said that it's going to cost something. So it's as far as I know, that's the first time it's ever been publicly stated by somebody from LCH that this closing of St. Andrews will cost somebody something. The other thing that I wanted to comment on was Dr. Foray's remark about the iVantage report. He said, once again, they read the report and couldn't find anything new in it. There was nothing new in it. Well, one of the most fascinating things I found in the report were the comments made about real estate valuations on the peninsula.
Right.
They were they reported from retired people who bought here, and every single my recollection is that every single person they interviewed said they would not have bought here had there not been a hospital. The other group, the other people they spoke to were some of the real estate professionals that are engaged in selling houses, etc. And they said that it would be much more difficult to sell houses. So the interesting thing from Dr. Foray's comment is that he didn't either see that or he already knew it, but there's not been a word from them about that reduction in real estate costs and values.
And one last small comment. Perhaps they're planning to convert the St. Andrews free bed fund into the free gas fund, so that every trip to Miles, which is going to cost anybody who goes up there $7 at today's price, and that's the car gets decent gas mileage. That's the kind of little dripping cost that you can't quantify it because it's spread out too thin over too many people. But it's a real cost to the people of this community. Each round trip to Miles will cost at least $7, maybe more.
Yep. Move we adjourn, brother.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks again, everyone.